The black waitress had spent years working double shifts at a small diner, earning just enough to get by, but she never let exhaustion dull her kindness. So when she saw a frail boy in a wheelchair shivering in the rain outside, she didn't hesitate. She brought him inside, gave him food, and made him feel safe across the street. A billionaire was watching their every move. That billionaire was the boy's father, and her simple act of kindness was about to open. Doors she never imagined possible. The storm hadn't let up for hours. Rain spilled from the sky in thick, steady sheets, flooding gutters and drenching anyone unlucky enough to still be outside. The Lexington diner was nearly empty, the way it always was after 10 p.m. on a weeknight. Just a few late-shift regulars nursing stale coffee and avoiding the cold. Serena Carter moved behind the counter like muscle memory, wiping crumbs off tables, refilling ketchup bottles, doing the same quiet dance she did every night. Her back ached, her feet were swollen, and her tips were laughable. But she smiled anyway. Habit, mostly. Kindness didn't pay rent, but it was the only currency she had some days. She was about to lock the door for the night when she noticed him. A small figure outside, barely visible through the fogged-up glass. A kid, maybe 9 or 10. Sitting in a battered wheelchair, soaked to the bone, arms curled tight around himself like he was trying to disappear. Serena's heart tugged the way it always did when something wasn't right. She pushed the door open, letting a gust of cold air rush in and slap her skin. "Hey, baby," she called gently, stepping out into the rain. "You okay out here?" The boy looked up, startled. His hair clung to his forehead, water dripping from his lashes. "I'm waiting for my dad," he mumbled, voice so soft it nearly got swallowed by the rain. Serena scanned the street, nothing but shadows and flickering lights. No cars, no footsteps, no one coming. She knelt beside him, her apron already damp, her curls sticking to her cheeks. "You've been out here long," he shrugged. "A while." She didn't ask why his dad wasn't answering. She didn't ask why the kid looked like he hadn't eaten in a day. She just stood up and said, "Come on, let's get you warm." He hesitated, then gave a tiny nod. Serena grabbed the wheelchair handles, guided him up the slight step, and rolled him inside. The warmth hit them both instantly, and the boy shivered, harder before settling. She dried him off with a clean kitchen towel, sat him near the radiator, and brought him a plate, grilled cheese and a hot bowl of tomato soup. The same thing her grandmother used to make when everything else in life fell apart. "This one's on me," she said gently, slipping a spoon into his hand. The boy looked up at her like she was magic. He ate slowly at first, like he didn't quite believe it was real. But by the second bite, he was slurping the soup with happy hums and chewing the sandwich like it was a 5-star meal. Serena leaned on the counter and watched him, something warm unfurling in her chest. "What's your name, sweetie?" "Eli," he said with a little grin. "Nice to meet you, Eli. I'm Serena." That grin widened, and something in her melted. She didn't know it yet, but across the street, parked in a matte black luxury car with tinted windows, someone was watching. Watching everything. The man's knuckles were white around the steering wheel, his jaw tight, his gaze fixed not on his son, but on her, Serena Carter. The woman who'd fed his child, warmed him up, made him laugh, all while he, billionaire tech mogul Nathaniel Ward, had been too busy on a call to remember what time it was. He didn't believe in kindness. He believed in debt. And now, whether she realized it or not, Serena Carter had just changed the course of her entire life. Serena didn't think much of it after he left. A woman had shown up 10 minutes later, all crisp blazer and no umbrella. She didn't introduce herself, just said she was Eli's aunt and that his father had sent her. The boy hadn't argued, but his smile had faded. He clutched the cookie Serena slipped into his palm, like it was his last link to something good, and then he was gone. Serena had cleaned up the table, wiped down the booth, and locked up like always. Walked home in wet sneakers. Climbed the creaky stairs to her third-floor apartment, where the heat wheezed through rusty vents and the walls smelled faintly of mildew. Nothing had changed. Except something had. She just didn't know what yet. The next morning, she was pulling her apron over her head when there was a knock on the diner's back door. She blinked. Nobody knocked back there. Cautious, she opened it halfway. A man stood on the other side, broad-shouldered, expensive coat, sharp gray eyes. Something about the way he stood, like he owned the street, made her stomach tense. "You Serena Carter?" he asked, voice smooth, like it belonged on a boardroom stage or an FBI wiretap. "Who's asking?" she replied, hand still on the door. "Nathaniel Ward," he said, as if that should mean something to her. It didn't. "I was the one across the street last night," he added. "Watching." Her heart skipped. She gripped the door tighter. "You were watching the kid? Eli?" "My son," he confirmed, no emotion in it, like it was just another business asset. Serena stepped out, her eyes narrowing. "You left your disabled son in the rain?" He blinked slowly, as if not used to being questioned. "I was on a call. I don't care if you were curing cancer." He was freezing. That jaw of his tightened. But not in anger. More like restraint. Like he was used to shutting people down with a look, and she wasn't playing by the rules. "You helped him," he said finally. "Yeah, I did. Because it was the right thing to do. That's why I'm here." He reached into his coat. For a second, she braced. Just a flash of instinct from too many bad nights and worse memories. But he only pulled out an envelope. She didn't take it. What's that supposed to be? A job offer? She stared at him like he'd grown. A second head. "I'm not some charity case," she said, folding her arms. "I don't believe in charity," he replied. "But I do believe in paying debts." Serena scoffed. "You think this makes us even?" "I think you're the kind of person I need working for me." That made her blink. "Doing what? Cleaning your offices?" "Public relations. Outreach." "You're good with people. You don't know me. I know what I saw." There was silence, the kind that buzzed. Serena looked down at the envelope in his hand. It wasn't thin. It wasn't cheap. Whatever was in it, it had weight, real weight. And for a second, just 1 second, she let herself imagine it. Not struggling to pay rent. Not picking up double shifts just to keep the lights on. Not worrying about whether her car would start or if the landlord would change the locks. But then her mother's voice echoed in her head. "They don't give without taking, baby. Remember that." Serena met his eyes again. "I'll think about it." Nathaniel nodded once. Sharp. Final. Then he turned and walked away like he'd already sealed the deal, and maybe he had. By the time Serena opened the envelope, her hands were already sweating. She had waited until the end of her shift, waited until she was home, showered, sitting at the tiny chipped kitchen table she used for eating, thinking, and bills. Mostly bills. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper, so crisp it looked like it had never been folded. Letterhead from Ward Enterprises, and underneath it, a formal job offer. Position, Community Outreach Liaison. Salary, $112,000 per year. Benefits, full health, dental, $491K, travel stipend. Start date, immediate. Her breath caught, the number made. Her dizzy. 6 figures. More than she'd made in the last 4 years combined. Hell, more than her mother had made in her entire lifetime, working at the post office until arthritis forced her out. She stared at the paper until her eyes blurred. Then she flipped it over, looking for the fine print. The catch. The reason this was too good to be true. But there was nothing. No guilt clause. No must-kiss billionaire's ass condition. Just a handwritten note at the bottom in looping, sharp handwriting. Come in Monday. I don't waste time. N.W. Serena sat back, heart thudding in her chest. She should have thrown it away. She should have called it what it was. A rich man's guilty conscience wrapped in a silk ribbon. but the part of her that had been tired for far too long. It whispered, "What if this isn't about guilt? What if this is a door you weren't supposed to see, but now it's open?" Monday came. She walked through the revolving doors of Ward Tower wearing her best outfit, a blazer one size too big and thrift store heels she couldn't feel her toes in. The lobby smelled like wealth, like polished stone and filtered air. People moved like they belonged, like they'd never struggled to afford lunch or worried about overdraft fees. Serena didn't belong here, but she held her head high anyway. The elevator ride to the 37th floor was silent, awkward, tense. She could feel the eyes on her. The way the receptionist had blinked when she gave her name. The way the man in the navy suit had looked her up and down, then looked away like she didn't matter. Nathaniel Ward was waiting in a glass-walled office the size of her entire apartment. He didn't stand, just pointed to the seat across from him. "You came," he said simply. "You gave me a reason." He nodded once. "Good. This job isn't fluff. You'll be coordinating with community leaders, managing press events, and making sure our company doesn't look like it's run by robots." "You mean rich white men." Something twitched in the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. "Yes." Serena leaned back. "Why me?" Nathaniel's eyes didn't blink. "Because you don't need me to like you. That makes you dangerous. I want someone dangerous." She studied him for a moment, unsure if it was a compliment or a warning. Maybe both. He handed her a company badge. "Your office is down the hall. First meeting is in 30 minutes. Serena took the badge. It felt heavier than it looked. By lunch, half the office was whispering about the new girl. By the end of the week, 3 executives had already tried to test her, talk over her in meetings, dismiss her suggestions, treat her like an outsider, in her own role. But Serena Carter didn't play small. She had survived eviction notices, 3 jobs at once, and men who thought a waitress was fair game. Corporate sharks in suits didn't scare her. She just smiled, sharpened her words, and let them realize. She didn't come here to blend in. She came to shake the table. And Nathaniel Ward? He watched it all from his glass office. And for the first time in years, the man who built an empire without blinking felt something like uncertainty creeping in. Because Serena Carter wasn't just a good hire. She was a disruption. It didn't take long for Serena to realize that behind all the shine, Ward Enterprises was held together by tension. Thin, polished, corporate tension. On the surface, everything gleamed. Open concept offices. Handcrafted espresso machines. Bi-weekly yoga breaks. But underneath, clenched jaws. Backroom whispers. Board members who smiled too wide and watched too closely. It was a world that rewarded loyalty, but fed on silence. And Serena. She was anything but silent. By week 3, she was in meetings with nonprofit directors, rebuilding the company's floundering image in Baltimore's low-income neighborhoods. She spoke plainly. Didn't pander. Didn't try to be palatable. Some people hated her for it. Others were watching her with interest, especially Nathaniel. He barely spoke outside of work, barely smiled, barely breathed sometimes. But whenever she was in the room, his eyes locked on her, like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, and she knew exactly what was happening. He was intrigued, not attracted, interested, dangerous kind of interest. The kind men like him only showed to things they couldn't buy or intimidate. It made her uneasy, but it also gave her leverage. One Thursday evening, she was wrapping up a call when she noticed a shadow at her door. She turned, expecting Sameh, junior exec. Instead, it was Eli. Serena blinked. He looked brighter, healthier, a little less fragile, like maybe someone had started actually being a father to him. But those blue eyes, still quiet, still unsure, lit up when they saw her. "You work here now?" he asked, rolling in on his chair like he owned the floor. "I do," Serena smiled. "You approve?" He grinned. "Way better than the diner." She knelt beside him. "What are you doing here? Your dad let you wander the skyscraper solo?" "No," came a deep voice from behind. She looked up. Nathaniel stood in the doorway, tie loosened, jaw tight. For once, he looked human. "I brought him," he said. Serena stood. "Why?" Nathaniel's eyes flickered. "He asked to see you." The room went still. Serena looked back at Eli, who nodded seriously. "You're my friend," he said, simple as breathing. And something in Serena cracked. She felt it. That small tear in the wall she'd built between kindness and survival. "I'm glad you came," she said softly, brushing a curl off his forehead. "You hungry?" Eli nodded. "Always." Serena turned to Nathaniel. "You have a private chef. What's he doing asking me for food?" Nathaniel tilted his head. "Maybe he prefers people who actually smile at him." The words hit deeper than they should have. Not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. Low. Honest. Like maybe, just maybe, he was starting to see his own cracks. They all ended up in the executive kitchen. Serena making grilled cheese from pantry scraps. Eli telling stories between bites, and Nathaniel sitting at the edge of it all like he didn't belong. Like he was watching something sacred he didn't know how to enter. When Eli finally dozed off in a corner chair, full and smiling, Nathaniel spoke. "You know," he said quietly, "I've had a dozen nannies, tutors, therapists. No one's ever gotten through to him like you did." Serena didn't look at him. "Maybe that's because you keep hiring people to raise him instead of doing it yourself." The silence that followed was sharp. She turned. Met his eyes. No flinching. No apology. Just truth. Nathaniel didn't defend himself. Didn't lecture. He just nodded once. Slow. "You're right." And for the first time, she believed he meant it. It all started with a whisper. Just a casual murmur in the hallway. Two junior analysts chatting near the coffee bar, not realizing Serena was just around the corner. "Ward's pet project's getting too comfortable," one said, snorting. "She probably thinks she's going to run this place next," the other replied. They both laughed, until they saw her watching. Their smiles froze. Serena didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The way she raised one eyebrow, cool and unimpressed, was enough to send them scattering like roaches under a light. But the sting stayed. Not because they doubted her, but because she knew they weren't the only ones. She'd felt it building for weeks now. The side glances, the closed-door meetings, the polite invitations she stopped receiving. She was shaking the system, and it was starting to push back. By the end of that week, it escalated. A board member, Harold. Bexley, gray-haired, Harvard tie, handsy eyes, called her into his office, said he wanted to chat about direction. She brought a notepad, thinking it was work. It wasn't. "Serena," he said, offering a smirk that made her skin crawl. "You've got something special. Real fire. But let's not forget who you're representing." "I'm representing the people," she said bluntly, "and Ward Enterprises. In that order." He chuckled like she'd told a joke. "You're a good-looking woman, Serena. Charming. But this isn't a community center. It's business. Don't get too caught up in your own story." She stared at him. Then she stood, leaned forward, and spoke with ice in her voice. "Keep talking like that, Harold," she said, "and you'll find yourself in a harassment suit with my name at the top and half the internet under it." His smile faltered. She didn't wait for a response. Just walked out. But the damage was done. That night, she got an email marked urgent. Her access to 3 company servers had been restricted. Her calendar was suddenly wiped. A meeting invite went out to the board, and she wasn't copied on it. And then she knew someone was moving against her. It came to a head 2 days later. Nathaniel called her into his office. She walked in, calm but tight, every nerve on edge. He didn't greet her, just turned his laptop toward her. It was an email, a leak, confidential company documents. Emails between Serena and an environmental watchdog group. It looked like she'd been handing out data, compromising internal strategy, except she hadn't. She hadn't sent any of it. Her voice caught in her throat. This is fake. Nathaniel didn't blink. Can you prove that? I don't have to. Someone's framing me. The room was silent, and for the first time, Nathaniel didn't look sure. He didn't look cold either. He looked torn, like he didn't want to believe it, but also like he knew what people like him were supposed to do next. Serena stepped back. You really think I'd burn the company I'm trying to fix? I don't think you'd make a mistake like this, he said carefully. But you've made enemies, Carter. Real ones. His use of her last name hit different now. Less cold. More protective. Still, the weight of the accusation lingered in the room like smoke. What happens now? She asked, arms crossed, daring him. I'm launching an internal investigation, he said. Privately, no suspension. But the board is watching. Serena nodded once. Then she turned, walked out of his office, and didn't speak to anyone for the rest of the day. But that night, she didn't cry. She didn't panic. She opened her laptop, cracked her knuckles, and did what every underestimated black woman in a white-collar war zone has always done. She started hunting for the one who was trying to bury her. And when she found them, she wasn't going to just clear her name. She was going to ruin theirs. Serena didn't sleep that night. She sat at her chipped kitchen table, hoodie wrapped around her like armor, a cup of coffee gone cold at her elbow. Her laptop screen glared back at her as she combed through her emails, messages, anything that felt even slightly off. The leak had been precise. Too precise. It didn't just make her look sloppy. It made her look calculated. That meant someone who knew her role, her schedule, the kind of conversations she was having. Someone close. She started from the inside. Her assistant, clean. IT department, no red flags. Then she landed on Logan Pierce, executive. VP of strategy, white guy, Wharton grad. 2 years younger than her, 10 years more arrogant. He hadn't liked her from day one. She could see it in the way he always corrected her in front of others. The way he called her Carter like it was a slur. The way he smiled like he already knew she wouldn't last. And he had motive. She'd blocked one of his outsourcing deals a month ago. Told the board it would gut the community outreach credibility they were trying to build. He lost face. Lost. Leverage. Maybe now he wanted revenge. She dug deeper. At 3:43 a.m., she found it. A forwarded email, sloppily buried in a batch of system logs from 2 weeks ago. An attachment copied from her draft folder, a document she'd never sent. It had been forwarded from a proxy server. But the access log, it led back to Logan's IP. Serena sat back, heart pounding. She had him. But she didn't want justice. She wanted humiliation. So she printed everything. Every email. Every digital fingerprint. Every calendar discrepancy. And brought it straight to Nathaniel's office at 8:01 the next morning. He looked up from his desk, startled by her presence. I didn't schedule a... She dropped the folder onto his desk with a sharp slap. You want proof? She said. There it is. He opened it, brows furrowed. His eyes scanned the pages, sharp and focused, the way they always were when he smelled blood in the water. By the second page, his jaw clenched. This is real. Serena folded her arms. Call it if you need to double check, but yeah, it's real. Logan set me up. Nathaniel stood, the air around him shifting. He didn't say another word. Just grabbed the folder, turned and stormed out of the office. Serena followed. The walk to the executive floor felt like a march. Phones ringing. Suits parting in the hallway like he was Moses at the Red Sea. Everyone could feel it. Something was coming. When they burst into the conference room, where Logan was giving a presentation, the air turned electric. Nathaniel didn't raise his voice. He just said, "Shut it down." Logan turned, blinking. "Excuse me?" Nathaniel held up the folder, calm and precise. "You framed Serena Carter, used company resources to manipulate internal documents, forwarded them to the press. A pin could have dropped." Logan laughed, a dry, shaky sound. "That's ridiculous. She's clearly trying to save herself." Serena stepped forward. "Then explain the VPN logs with your ID, or the timestamp on my draft folder access, logged from your office, or the fact that your assistant signed off." "On your behalf for the proxy account." Logan's face drained. Nathaniel spoke again. "You're done, but security is on the way. I'd sit down until they arrive." By the time the guards showed up, Logan's hands were shaking. He didn't say a word as they led him out. But Serena? She stood tall. And when the doors shut behind him, she looked around at the board members watching from behind the glass. Let them stare. Let them know. She wasn't the weak one in the room. She was the woman who'd just taken down a man who thought she'd never matter. The months that followed were something out of a life Serena never imagined she'd live. Her title became permanent. Director of Community Strategy. The role expanded. She had a team now, people who reported to her, respected her. She didn't just have a seat at the table. She was building new ones in neighborhoods corporate America had long forgotten. Ward Enterprises shifted too. Quietly at first, then louder. Nathaniel put resources behind her proposals. He redirected budgets. They launched 3 youth tech centers across Baltimore in under 6 months, places where kids like Eli could learn to code, design, dream. And Serena? She no longer flinched when people said her name in boardrooms. She carried it like armor. But even in the noise of progress, there were quiet moments that pulled at her. Late nights at her desk, when everyone else had gone home, and the city glowed beyond the glass windows. Moments when she'd catch herself rereading emails from Nathaniel. Short, direct, but always with something between the lines. Moments with Eli, too, who'd started calling her coach after she helped him get through a school project about resilience. She'd walked him through every slide, taught him how to speak with his chest, even when he was nervous. He got an A. He framed it. One evening, after a fundraiser in D.C., Nathaniel drove her home instead of sending the usual car. The city was quiet, his hands on the wheel, his posture relaxed in a way she rarely saw. "You ever think about how weird this all is?" she asked, watching the traffic lights blur through the rain-speckled window. "All the time," he admitted. She smiled, tired. "And real. I used to count nickels to make rent. Now people call me Ms. Carter, like I'm supposed to know what fork to use at a gala." "You belong," he said without hesitation. She turned to him. "So do you." He let out a soft, almost laugh. "I've never belonged anywhere. Just owned a lot of rooms." They pulled up to her building. He didn't reach for the door. Just sat there. "Serena." She looked at him, surprised by the way he said her name. Quiet, reverent, like it meant something heavy in his chest. "I meant what I said that night," he said. "I'll wait. But I need to know if you're waiting too." She didn't answer right away. Her hands were in her lap, fingers curled tight. But then she looked at him. Really looked. Past the money. Past the control. To the man who had watched her feed his child with nothing but warmth. The man who hadn't tried to own her, but had stood beside her while the world tried to push her out. "I'm not waiting," she said softly. His face barely moved, but she saw it. That flicker of something full behind his eyes. Then she leaned forward and added, "I'm walking. If you want to come, you better keep up." And with that, she kissed him. Not out of fantasy, not because he was rich, not because it was a fairy tale, but because they'd earned it. Because something real had been built between them, brick by stubborn brick. 1 year later, Serena Carter stood in front of the Carter Ward Community Center, microphone in hand, Eli. Beside her, in a pressed shirt and crooked tie. Dozens of kids behind them, reporters in front. She spoke clearly, proudly, her voice carrying over the crowd. This center isn't just a building. It's a promise that no child gets left in the sea or the rain, that no woman's kindness goes unnoticed. That power can serve instead of silence. The applause thundered. Nathaniel stood behind her, hands folded, expression unreadable but soft in the eyes. When their eyes met, he nodded once. And Eli? He leaned over and whispered, "Told you you'd run this place someday." Serena laughed. Blinking back the tears, she refused to let fall in public. "Damn right I do," she whispered back. And she did, because it all started with a sandwich and a smile. But it ended with a legacy.